In 2014, the most widespread outbreak of Ebola in history swept across West Africa, wreaking havoc on Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. Thousands dead, thousands more infected. It was tragic. I was doing youth ministry at the time, and one Sunday during the crisis, I saw a post on Facebook from my friend Jen, who's a missionary in Haiti, about the fact that this church in Port-au-Prince called Sus de la Grace had taken a special offering to send to Liberia to help Ebola victims, and they collected $300. And I swallowed hard when I read it, because the people at Sus de la Grace are among the world's poorest. This was less than 4 years after the earthquake had completely wrecked their country, taken the lives of their loved ones, including the pastor's young son. Almost 100% of that congregation lived in tarp villages. Most had no reliable income and struggled with malnutrition, and the church itself sits like smack dab in the middle of probably the poorest square mile in the Western Hemisphere. And yet, those people took an additional offering and gave $300 to help. I was just wrecked by that. And so that morning at the end of our high school service, I stood up in front of a bunch of teenagers and said, hey, Ebola is ravaging West Africa, and it breaks my heart. It breaks God's heart too. And a church in Haiti, from one of the poorest places on the planet, just took a special offering and raised $300 to help. I feel like we can match that. I know you're just high school students and you already gave whatever you brought or like whatever your parents gave you to the offering. I know all you have left in your pockets is birthday money for some of you, gas money that you need to get around, maybe some cash to buy prom tickets. I know a lot of you are freshmen and sophomores. You don't have jobs. Maybe you don't have any money on you at all, and that's fine. But I'm challenging you guys to take whatever you've got and put it in the bucket on the way out, because I think we can match that 300, and I feel like maybe that's what God's inviting us to this morning. And as they all filed out, kid after kid after kid dropped in a little bit of money. Some of them like cleaned their pockets out and dropped in their loose change. Some dropped in bigger bills. A lot of them had no money on them at all, and that was fine. We'd already passed the offering once. But it was so cool to see. And then after everyone was gone, we added it up. $298 and change. And I was so pumped. I really wanted to hit 300, and I wondered if maybe I should just goose it a little bit and add a few bucks and tell them, you guys hit the goal. But I thought, this is super cool. God moved in their hearts, and they lived like Jesus today with open hands, and we got over $298. So I started walking back to my office with this paint bucket full of money, and then I saw one of my special needs students walking toward me with his mom. And they stopped me, and she said, Peter told me there was a special offering today to help the people who are sick in Africa. And he didn't have any money left because he already put in his offering, but he really felt like Jesus wanted him to give. And so he asked me for an advance on his allowance for next week so he could give all of his money today. And I told him, now, Peter, if I give that to you today, you won't be getting any money from me next week. And he said, I know, Mom. Next week I'm doing all my chores for Africa. And then I looked at Peter and I said, thank you so much. Are you sure, buddy? And he said, yeah. And I watched his mom pull out $3 bills and hand them to him. And I'll never forget, like not for 1 second in my life, the look on Peter's face as he put his $3 into that bucket. Like almost a decade later, I can still see it, and it's still like profound for me. Because I'll be honest with you guys, I don't know that I've ever, for one day in my life, lived the way Peter lived that day. But I want to. Because I'm convinced all of us were made to live that way, with that kind of open-handed generosity that sets us free. Like free to grow our faith because we learn God will never leave us empty-handed. Free to be part of what God's doing to help heal up our shattered world. Free to be who we were created to be. You know, for the last couple of weeks, we've been in this series called The Test, and digging into the one place in the entire Bible where God invites us to test him. In Malachi 3, God looks at his people who have kind of closed their fists around what he's placed in their hands and says pretty simply, you are robbing me by holding on to what doesn't belong to you. Everything you got and everything you get ultimately belongs to me, and I entrusted it to you as an investment in human flourishing. I gave it to you to accomplish 3 purposes. Number 1, to teach you to trust that I provide as you give a 10% tithe back to me. Like to make sure your creator, not your cash, is in first place in your heart, because if money takes over, it'll crush you. Number 2, to provide for you so that you and your family can thrive. And number 3, to give you the gift of purpose and mission by inviting you to give to meet the needs of the people around you so you can be a part of what I'm doing to set things right and make things new. But then God looks at him and he says, you guys aren't doing that. at all. You're living under the consumption assumption. Whatever I get and whatever I got is meant to be spent on me. And it's unraveling the fabric of the way I knit the universe together. You guys are missing out on blessing others. You're struggling with financial fear, with monetary misery, worried you're never going to have enough. Ultimately, you are living less than fully alive because you've missed the opportunity to know that you know that you know I will always provide, and you've missed the mission I made you for. But I want to set you free and help you live fully. So test me on this. God says, test me on this. Bring the whole tithe, not part of it, the whole tithe, the whole 10% to the storehouse, and see if I won't open the floodgates of heaven and bless you in ways beyond what you could have imagined. It's an incredible passage. And you guys, I know money's an uncomfortable topic. It's uncomfortable to hear about, but I can tell you as a leader, it's uncomfortable to speak about because I know people don't like it. But Jesus talked about money all the time because, as we all know, money battles God for the throne of our hearts. And ironically, it impoverishes our lives if it sits up there. Like, there's a type of poverty in our world that kills generosity, but it's not economic. We're impoverished by the lies we believe about how our money, our bank accounts, our 401ks can provide the kind of hope, security, and future only God can actually provide. And so I'm inviting all of us to take God up on his offer to test him, to bring our full tithe, 10% for the next 90 days to him and see what he does. Because I think he wasn't kidding. And I think what we'll find as tithing teaches us to trust in God's provision and giving above and beyond that to the needs around us allows us to be part of his movement in the world. I think what we'll find is that we really were made to live and give like my old buddy Peter did. It sets us free to live with the kind of vibrancy, meaning, and beauty no amount of money can buy.